Hello, future ReZero fans who are watching this video. My name is
Shashmi from the past. Hello, everybody. It is Niab from the future, except technically not from the future because I'm recording this before even actually reading the last chapter of the current volume, which is volume 33. So technically speaking, somewhat future. But hello. You might be confused as to why we have a full arc video here instead of a small volume review like we usually do, because you know, the full video is definitely going to happen, but normally we just go volume by volume and then this would happen, but we're having it happen right now. That might seem confusing in case you're returning here, and let me explain really. We have a problem with the current volume. It's the fact that on it is a spoiler. Just right on the cover, there's a spoiler there. It's also a spoiler for me, actually, which is pretty damn bad, but you know what? I may get spoiled by it, but I'm not going to let other people get spoiled by it, for the most part. So, to avoid this, I have pretty much just done the full video right here that you're seeing. Also, as part of that, that might seem a little bit annoying, because now, of course, that might mean, oh, you have to watch through the whole video, or you have to skip to a certain part and you have to find that timestamp. Don't worry about that, I will literally provide timestamps on screen in a moment here. We also have EX5 here, which I will get to in the opening message here. But overall, here are just two timestamps for the things you're probably looking for here, EX5 and the final volume of Arc 7. I will say, EX5, you don't even really need the timestamp. We are literally going to start this video with it, so I don't feel like it's that bad with that. But the final volume, there's the timestamp right there. So if you just want to, go right to that, there it is. Feel free to go ahead. Anyways, past me, continue what you were saying. That already, but you might not. And welcome to the EX5 and second half of Arc 7 full review. All of it. Everything in there. Welcome. Now, I do want to note something before this video obviously begins, and that's how we're splitting this up. See, you might have noticed the fact that I mentioned EX5 in the second half of Arc 7, right? There's two separate things going on right here. And the reason for that is pretty damn simple. We're going to keep the first half of this video generally spoiler free. There's a few things I might mention here and there overall, but really it's going to remain generally spoiler free. You won't have to worry too much. We're just going to talk about the EX5 much like we've done with the previous EX novels. However, for the second half of the Arc 7 stuff, that will be spoiler related, obviously, because this is Arc 7, this is the latest arc. It's not even actually officially out yet, right? We're still on 6 essentially, so should be noted, this is still the latest arc and everything, therefore there will be spoilers. Just keep that in mind. Obviously, after EX5 is done, I'll give you all the warning to just leave if you want to leave, in case you just wanted to find out about the details regarding the novel, as well as hear my thoughts on it and everything, right? I'll give you the warning before we switch over, but obviously, just to let you all know, there's 2 separate seconds to this video. That's all I needed to say. Without further ado, let's get into the EX5 part, shall we? So I've now finished reading EX5, and I will say it's very interesting with how this volume is handled compared to the previous ones, right? With this, there's 2 separate stories essentially being told. Like a lot of the previous EX novels, a lot of them were more like contained, I'm gonna say, generally with the plot, right? Everything was related with what's going on. They kind of just went back to back in terms of events, right? This one still does, of course, but we take 2 different perspectives here overall. One from Priscilla, who is the main focus here, or I guess in this case for a large part of the first half, Priska, and then we get Al. And this is where I was very much looking forward to this EX novel, because Al is a character who I have very high up, right? He is in the 11th spot for me. He is very close to top 10. He is a very fucking interesting character. There's a lot of great moments with him, whole bunch of shit. So, he's pretty damn high up there, and this could have definitely changed it. I am going to say right now, he is closer to being the top 10, but I don't think he is just yet. He did get a decent bit here. I don't know, it's not necessarily enough for me to be like, oh man,
Al's just absolutely a top 10 character, and yeah, I like him a whole lot. Like, obviously I do like him a whole lot, but when comparing him to, I'd say, the character right above him, who is in the top 10, right, Wilhelm, these are two characters who got EX novels, got a lot there, and now have a lot in terms of the actual story of the series. But the problem is, Wilhelm got a whole lot. Al, for the most part, with this, kinda just gets moments overall, right? We still get a decent bit of Al here, of course, right? We get his interactions with the Hornet, who's this empress of the Gladiator Island, basically, you know, the top of the top, and she, much like Al, is kind of crippled in the fact that, you know, much like how Al is missing his left arm, she's missing both her arms, but then she puts on, like, 200-pound blades, I think they mention, something roughly like that, and is just able to connect the stumps of her arms into that and lift it up and all that. It's really damn cool. Then we also get interactions with Al and Ubilk, who talks to him about a decent few things. One of the main things being that he wants to start an uprising in the Gladiator Island, despite the fact that, you know, Al's been there a while. He knows this shit's not gonna work, right? I've been here forever, and I'm like, there's no fucking way this is gonna work. And Ubilk's just like trying to figure out a plan and everything. And by the end of it, he's somewhere, right? He's gone. He's out of there. We get a whole lot of Al here, and I do like it a lot. It's just, it's not enough, right? I do wish there was more to him here. Solely because, like, I do really want to have him in my top 10, but it just kind of felt like he had a lot of interactions here that were good, and it felt good to learn more about him, right? There's still this mystery about him regarding a certain someone that I'm very curious about, right? But overall, he was good here. I just wanted more. But then we look at the other side of things, right? We look at Priscilla, or Priska, whichever name you want to use. We get Priscilla here with this EX novel, who takes the main focus for the first part of it, and she gets a decent bit of focus with the second part, right? The main focus, of course, is the first half. But we get a lot here with her and her interactions with her brother, Vincent, right? Her and her interactions with her elder sister, Lamia, I think is how I pronounce it. I hope. I don't know. I may be butchering that. I've butchered these names before. But we get their interactions, and Lamia's definitely an interesting character. She's very persuasive, I want to say, right? But she's also very cunning, I want to say, where she's able to perfectly figure out a plan to essentially reach the top and disregard everybody else who's, you know, around her and everything. And we even get Bersex, is, I believe, how I pronounce his name. I honestly kind of forgot. But Bersex is there as well, and that's interesting. We do know about him from the previous EX volume, right? EX4, as well as other details, but still, we get to see him, and that's interesting. He's working with her, or was, because she's dead by the end of chapter 1. But yeah, we get to see him, that's interesting. We also get to see Priscilla interact with Arakia, and to be honest, this might be the biggest part for me. I actually forgot, in terms of a Twitter post I made a ranking of, oh yeah, here's how these characters rank for me in terms of a tier list. I genuinely forgot to move up Arakia a bit, because Priscilla and Arakia interacting here is really damn great. I like it a lot. You learn a whole lot more about them, and they mesh really damn well together. I don't know, I like them a lot. I think they're both really good here, and it did help raise my opinion of both of them. Priscilla especially, like, just everything she gets throughout this, with the second half and how she manages to stop the rebellion on the Gladiator Island and all this, and helps out Serena and all that, right? All that stuff is really damn great. Plus this, the chapter 1, with her and Vincent working together secretly, and then fucking over Lamia, right? That stuff is really damn good. Like, it builds on her a whole lot. But we also get to see, thanks to Arakia, a much more human side to Priscilla, which is, like, odd to say, almost, because, yeah, generally speaking, most of the characters in the series, you know, have a heart. But Priscilla's the one character where I feel like a lot of people would genuinely debate of, is this character a good person? Debatable, right? But more so the fact that, yeah, she does in fact have a heart. We learn that with this, with how she interacts with Arakia, and even this fake husband she had, who was essentially a like protector for her, because, you know, it wasn't supposed to be known that she's still alive, right? By the second chapter, she's supposed to be dead, which is why she changes her name, all this, right? Her name becomes Priscilla after being Priska, all that. It's interesting because essentially when her fake husband slash, you know, actually just her guardian is killed, she like refers to him as a fine man, right? Like he did a good job and all this. And it's interesting. It's thanks to this and Arakia, all these details, that we get to see a lot more of a human side to Priscilla. Not throughout the whole thing, right? She still generally acts like Priscilla would, but it's these moments where we get to see a much nicer side to her. And I like that a lot. That does genuinely increase how I feel about the character a whole lot. And, you know, all the other great shit she gets to do here, boom, immediate raise. And now I've decided to take her from that B tier I had her at to an A tier. Who knows, right? That I could even raise her higher depending on stuff. But, yeah, overall, this EX volume was pretty damn good. If I had to rank it actually, I would rank it in between essentially EX1, EX2, here's 5, here's 4, here's 3, right? 3's still damn good. It's just a more so light-hearted feeling EX novel. 4's still really good, right? But it does go through a whole lot of details real quick. And then we get to 5 here, right in the middle. And overall, it's really damn good, right? We got a lot of great interactions with Priscilla, Al, all this. By the way, they don't even interact in this volume. I thought they would. I really thought that they would have like some sort of interaction. Al hears her, of course, when she's, you know, speaking over the speaker. But that's about it. That's as far as it goes. These two characters do not interact with this volume. So that's pretty damn interesting. I thought they would, but I guess not. But EX5 right here in the middle, right? I like it a lot. I get to see more on these two characters that I already like, so it's great, right? Arakia gets to improve all this. There's a lot of really cool details here. Towards the end, it gets pretty damn good, and I appreciate that a lot. But that's towards the end, which pales in comparison to EX2, where a large majority of it, not really the start's a little bit slow of EX2, but a large majority of EX2 for me, I very much enjoyed. It was very much entertaining. And all of that pales in comparison to EX1 for me, where, holy shit, that is just the peak of it all that we've had so far. I was entertained thoroughly throughout that whole thing. And hey, maybe it'll get beaten at some point by another EX volume, but it's gonna have to try hard to do that. But yeah, that's EX5. So I guess with that out of the way, take it over from here, past me, because I guess that's really what this is. It's the past me taking over, so yeah, take it from here, me from a year ago. Alright, so volume 30. This is where we get into some interesting shit. Because now we have two different groups of people in two separate locations. We got everybody in the Demon City and everybody in the Fortress City. And I'm gonna be real, I am going to keep the Demon City talk to a very short minimum. I will essentially, you know, explain and give my thoughts on the more important stuff that's in there. Because I do like a lot of what's in there, and there is some surprising stuff in there. But if we're being real, a lot of the shit there is just talking. And not much else. There's not really much progress in terms of the event until, like, the last chapter. So let's give a very quick summary of all the events that happen here. The Great Calamity is now a thing. It's this weird scintilla shadow thing. We don't fully know why this is happening or whatever it may be, but the cause could be possibly the fact that Subaru was a kid and now she found him because he was becoming an adult again, right? It was getting reversed, except it didn't actually get reversed, but we'll get to that. Now everybody's trying to deal with the Great Calamity. Vincent/Abel comes up with the plan of, hey, let's destroy the Demon City. Yorna doesn't really like that plan. Yorna goes to fight the Great Calamity. Louis also goes to fight the Great Calamity. I've made several videos now and didn't realize how to pronounce their name correctly. That weird Catholic dude, whatever his name is, also goes to fight the Great Calamity. Eventually, Al starts joining him after he's become an adult. He actually met with the old man. Also, with that old man, he gave a nice little speech and everything, and mentioned that he's still going to help out Subaru. Al, you're doing a real great job at possibly getting into my top 10. Anyways, Al has joined the fight. So is Medium. Vincent's kind of just standing around, but he does figure out a plan, and that still involves destroying the Demon City. Yorna eventually agrees, so long as they have somewhere else to go. That obviously, is within the realm of his deal that he made with her. They, quote-unquote, deal with the Great Calamity, except it's still there. Tenza appears out of nowhere. She runs into the Great Calamity. That pretty much does it, and everything for it. Also, Torita's there. There's a whole thing about her being the Stargazer, and I mean, she's not the Stargazer. It was actually her sworn sister born on the same day as her, who she also helped with an assisted suicide, except not really helped, because it was the sister herself who killed herself, so it was technically just a suicide by somebody else's hand, but it was still their own suicide. Also, that sister is the mother of the little girl Shutterakian that I don't remember the name of. There's a lot of Shutterakians with just names, and it's hard to keep track of every single one of them. But she's the mother of that, and therefore Torita's not necessarily a Stargazer, but she does have the whole vision of the black-haired person with sharp eyes, like sharp black eyes that she has to kill, and all this. And we still gotta see where that goes. But glad to know she's not that. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much all the events that happened here. Oh, and of course, how could I forget? Subaru's now somewhere else. We'll get to that with the next volume. He also met up with Cecilus. He's here. I don't fully actually know how to pronounce his name correctly, but I'm going to say Cecilus. I mean, I think I did that last time, and hopefully that's correct. I mean, I guess there's an E in there, so it might not be pronounced like that, but still, he's there. He also looks like a kid, so that's interesting. And also, Tans is not dead. She just so happens to also be with them. But yeah, the stuff that happens here is pretty neat, right? Like, I think it works out well in terms of coming to the conclusion of what was happening at the end of the last volume. But there's not a lot that really happens here. And I will say, and I'll go further into this with the next volume, if what I've heard is correct. This does lead into the one problem I've found with Arc 7, and it's the fact that we have barely gone anywhere. I mentioned this with my review, but we really haven't made much progress in terms of, reaching the climax and everything. Luckily, though, we get the B-plot, and the B-plot stuff has a lot there. And by a lot, I mean, there is a lot. And some of it I have to really talk about because I may have said I'm not making a follow-up video, but I still have problems and I still have to discuss them. But now we get to the B-plot. So we start off the B-plot stuff with Priscilla and Rem, and via this chapter, we actually get to see a lot more about Priscilla, I feel. You see a more, human side to her, almost, right? She speaks in such a way here that obviously her motives and everything are kind of woo. But there is some, there is an actual person, I'm going to say, to her, if you get what I mean, right? I really like this chapter for that, because I think it does show more about her and everything. And all of a sudden, while she's having a bath with Ren, fucking dragons are coming via the sky. And then Heinkel comes out, he starts fighting a few of them, killing a few of them. Oh, that's pretty nice. We also get to see more about Schultz here, right? The little boy with Priscilla and all that, as well as Flop. And once again, the character I don't remember the name of, but we see more about all of them and everything. More so Flop and Schultz. And I do actually really like this a lot because you get to see, more about them, how they view things, all that. And as this progresses, eventually Heinkel shows up and everything, they speak to him. Oh no, here come the dragons. Like I mentioned, Heinkel fights a few of them. And then, out of nowhere, Madeline shows up, the 9th General, and she's here. And Heinkel is pissing his fucking pants all of a sudden. Which, I mean, I guess is kind of fair. This is a
general, but he is horrified of this, and everybody else is, quote unquote standing their ground. They don't really want to fight. I mean, I guess the little girl is, but the other two aren't really doing much. Heinkel is getting absolutely just wrecked. Like, he is eating shit, and it's to the point that he almost dies, except Schultz gets in the way, and then he's slashed. But he's not slashed, because he has the weird thing, the chaos flame shit that Yorna had, right? Whatever it is, like the whole thing that everybody in that city had. It's weird that he has that, and the implication is that it's via Priscilla, but I don't fully get it at the moment, right? I guess Priscilla has it in some way, perhaps, who knows? But yeah, from there, Priscilla eventually kind of joins in. Rem's kind of just healing everybody in the building, whereas Priscilla's moving out to go and fight. And eventually she makes her way there to fight Madeline. Everybody else escapes and all that. And now Priscilla's going to fight Madeline. And it's actually pretty cool, on top of the fact that Madeline's like struggling to actually, hit Priscilla. And Priscilla's landing some decent hits here and there, but also occasionally getting deflected. And then the big event happens. Emilia shows up. And here's the thing with this, right? Because we gotta talk about this. To some degree, I am okay with this, right? This is way better than I thought it was going to be. Because I thought this was going to be some absolute ridiculous bullshit that was barely going to be explained, and that it would lead to a lot of problems, and it doesn't really lead to a lot of problems, which I like, right? This is still good, I still like it. But I have about 3 problems with this that I just need to mention. Number 1, I'm aware that she gets in via some smuggling route that Otto has and everything. Cool, great. Here's the thing. Arc 7, at least from the implication that we get throughout the chapters, doesn't take place that much longer after Arc 6. We haven't spent that much time, since then. At most, maybe 2 weeks, and honestly I think 2 weeks is, pushing it way too far. I think it's been a week. So it's a little bit ridiculous on time. Now, why is time a problem? Well, here's the thing. Number 2. How did she get here this quickly? Hear me out. Right? Cool. They might have had some smuggling route to get her in and just go, right? Perfect. Neat. I guess to a degree that can work, right? She was in Lagunica, and then, okay, get in this carriage, we'll just shove you in there. Nice. Here's the problem. Do we remember how long it took to get to the Pleiadius Watchtower? Do we remember? Because if I recall correctly, bare minimum it took a few weeks, or some shit like that. If I'm remembering correctly. They said, at most, the trip would be 2 months or something. And I'm mostly saying bare minimum because I don't necessarily remember if it really did take 2 months, right? But bare minimum, it probably was a few weeks to go there. So, this is where the problem comes in. Because not only does it seem ridiculous that we went from the fucking Watchtower to Wallachia, it seems ridiculous that we went from the Watchtower to Lagunica in this time. I don't even care if the sand time wasn't there anymore. I don't even care if everything, stopped, and then, okay, cool, sand time's gone. How did they get here this quickly? What did they do? The one explanation you could give me, possibly, and this still wouldn't even make that much sense, is, Emilia used some weird ice magic to create a perfect ramp all the way across. What? Right? I don't know. I'm very confused by how quickly we've moved. Just from here to there, right? A little bit weird. Number 3. This isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. There are worse things, and I'll get into that. But I will say Emilia being here does kind of remove some tension. There is still, some actual story elements that still work despite her being here, along with Otto, who we'll get to, and 2 other characters who are confirmed, but they've yet to appear at all, so I will not mention anything. But, overall, none of these characters necessarily ruin, what's there in terms of the story, right? Like, ruin the stuff with Rem or the stuff with Subaru, necessarily. But it does kind of take away some tension when it's like, okay, we now have the broken ice magic user here. Yippee! There goes our challenge. We have her now. So, it's a little bit unfortunate in my opinion that she's here. Now, the one possible problem I was going to have with this actually gets removed not too long after this, like 2 chapters later. And we'll get into that right now, because now Emilia and Priscilla have their fight against Madeline. They absolutely kick her ass, but then Madeline does an attack that just blows them away. And now Madeline's also blown away, right? I mean, she's been struggling with these 2 and really has not been doing that well. And she's super enraged and all this shit. And now Flop and Rem are there, and she tries to just get up and attack the first person she sees. She's real strong, seeing as she's a dragonkin, which they explain isn't necessarily like a dragon, but more so its own secondary species of dragon, stuff like that, right? Like, in terms of power and everything, they're similar to Oni. But she tries to attack Rem, and Flop gets in the way, and he gets brutally hurt. And now Rem has to heal him. But the first thing that Madeline notices is the little fang that's hanging on Flop's chest, and she starts getting pissed about that. And this scene coming up, I really fucking love it. This really fortifies how I feel about my favorite character. Rem manages to perfectly negotiate, making sure Flop is okay and everything, while also making sure the city's okay and following what Madeline wants, right? She essentially gets Madeline to remove all the dragons that are there, and she will heal Flop, but all the dragons have to go, right? So that means the entire city's safe after that point. She perfectly does it. They get taken away though, and after this point we first of all we get to see Otto, so Otto's here now. That's cool. I mean, honestly, it's pretty nice, and I guess if Emilia's going to be here, it makes sense, of course, that he's going to be here. But after this point, we get to see more about Flop and his backstory. He's actually very close friends, to the point of being sworn brothers, with that dude from EX4. I'm very glad I read EX4. The dude who was the previous 9th general, who had a dragon and all that. Yeah, he's a close friend of his. So that's pretty nice. It's interesting to see that, right? And they build on that a whole lot, because that dragon that previous 9th general had was essentially the fang he had on his chest, right, on the necklace. That was actually from that dragon when it was growing up, because of course, they were all growing up together. And he had that from when the dragon was young, and it turns out Madeline actually was trying to be the wife of essentially that previous 9th general. It's a really interesting plotline. I think it actually ties it all perfectly together, and it makes sense then why she's the 9th general, and also I'm gonna say dragon related, right? It's fitting. But with all this, we get a whole bunch of stuff related to Flop and all that, and we get a scene with Rem that I really fucking like, because now Rem is essentially captured in the Prime Minister territory, which, by the way, the Prime Minister totally knows about Abel and all that and the whole plan. Or maybe not the whole plan, but he's well aware of Abel and all that. And through this, essentially, he has Rem there as their healer, somewhat. I mean, it's more so something Madeline wants, so that Flop can tell her more and everything. But, they have Rem captured there, and we get a really great scene, because this is exactly what I want, right? There was something I was thinking throughout the previous chapters with the way Rem made those negotiations and a few other things, and it was the fact that, I feel like something's clicking in her brain right now, right? And this chapter proved it to me. because I got so excited when I read this line, by the way. I like just need to state that. I got really fucking excited when I read this line. We get the line of, you know, she's thinking about Subaru and thinking about, like, man, I wonder how he feels, like, or how he would feel, rather, if he knew that I were, like, captured, right, if I were gone. And she thinks about the pain that would be in his heart, and then proceeds to have the same pain herself, but she doesn't know where it's coming from. And I love this because it is literally the third arc line, the one that happens before she goes fucking comatose. It's happening again, but now we're having it with the modern arc with the amnesia version of her. And it's fucking perfect. I love it that you know, we've come full circle here. But that's overall the B plot stuff. I think the stuff with Amelia is fine. I like it. But I think that could have been handled better. Like, it really could have. This could have happened possibly later. This could have possibly just been handled a little bit differently or been explained better, but I feel like there should have been more there. But overall, I did actually really like the B plot. I thought it was really fucking great and got me excited to keep, like, reading, right? Also, as a side note, I forgot to mention this earlier when I was actually talking about the main A plot type of stuff, but I actually don't fully know the reasoning for Tanza stopping the whole Satella Shadow. If I had to assume, it's probably because their goal was to, you know, play hide and seek with Olbart, but also, you know, was trying to find Tanza, and seeing as Tanza was part of that equation, that might be it. But if I misunderstood something, or we just, you know, there was an explanation and I didn't fully get it, feel free to let me know. If there's not, or that was it, I mean, then yeah, I guess I understand it, or I just don't, and none of us do. But yeah, that's it for this volume. So fuck the idea of the B-plots and everything. We're going right back to Subaru's perspective, and we're sitting there the whole ass time. So, we're on the Gladiator Island now, something I've been, you know, very much looking forward to see how it is and everything, especially since Al mentioned it. And now we get to see it. Essentially, now, you know, Subaru's here and everything. He can't really escape because there's witch beasts in the water. That's a bit of a problem. There's also a curse rule where, you know, breaking that rule, you'll just fucking die. That's also a problem. And an interesting little thing is that it seems like Cecilus has been a child for so long now that he can't remember shit. More specifically, he can't remember the 9 Divine Generals, which is definitely something big, seeing as, you know, he's number 1 on that list, and he doesn't remember them. But, yeah. But now, Subaru has to participate in the, like, activities of the island, essentially. More specifically, at the current moment, he has to participate in what's known as Sparka, which kinda, essentially, is the, like, tutorial for becoming a gladiator in a way, right? It's the way to essentially get to that rank. And now, you know, Subaru has to do that with a group of people that he barely knows, who we do actually know their names, because they will be showing up a whole lot in this volume. And that's Hiane, Idra, and Waits. Just assume that's how you say all the names, but who cares? Because really, until we get an animated, you know, version or anything like that, I don't think we'll probably know. Unless it actually says it in the volumes, which, in that case, damn. But anyways, we meet all of them, and now they participate in Sparka. And there's a lot of loops here, mostly because they're fighting a witch beast. Specifically, I think they're fighting a, like, dehorned, like, guilty low or something, which is fitting that that's Subaru's opponent, you know, considering his whip. But, which he doesn't have, of course, but, you know, now all of them have to fight this thing, and there's a lot of loops where different things essentially happen, right? Different interactions with this group. And it actually makes them all pretty interesting, right? Because it gives all sorts of different, like, perspectives into what, like, each of these loops kind of play off of, right? Like, play into all that. So I do actually really like that. But
essentially Subaru has to figure out how does he handle this thing. Like, there's two swords there, and you know, they both have pros and cons to them. And it's just him and his group trying to figure out what to do. And eventually, they figure it out. Kind of. Because after doing a whole bunch of shit, you know, it still doesn't amount to enough. It's still there, still alive, and they could very easily die. Except, Subaru wasn't the only one who came to this island. Because you might remember, from the previous volume, he actually made it here with Tanza as well. You know, he was carrying her the whole time. And this whole time she was asleep. Despite being part of this group, she was asleep. More so knocked out. But, out of nowhere, just runs in and decapitates the beast. Because she's pretty damn strong. And I think they actually mentioned that that's part of Yorna's whole relationship with her, but I think it also might just be, you know, her. But still, they, you know, essentially passed the Sparka, and now Subaru is like all buddy-buddy with these guys as well as a few other gladiators and all that, right? He's going around talking to a whole lot of them, trying to figure out what to do. Tenza's not really huge on, you know, him just what seems like goofing around, but you know, he's trying to figure out a plan here and everything. And he wants to see the drawbridge, which we find out that it gets lifted out of the ocean, which is a problem. Because it's not as simple as, oh, we just wait for it to go down, and then we run, or some shit like that. It comes out of the water, and if it's not there, we're fucked. So, you know, it becomes a lot more complicated than that. But then past this point, you know, Subaru's like talking some more with the big man, like the big man in control of the whole island, Gustav, because essentially, Subaru, you know, fucked around a little bit. To help out Hien with his friends and everything that were there, he essentially tried to get himself punished on purpose so that he could enter another Sparka, which had Hien's friends in there. He helped them out, you know, and then Hien feels like grateful to him and everything. But that wasn't really the point. It's just more so that, like, happened and everything, right? He wanted to figure some stuff out, as well as, you know, speak to Gustav and everything, or in a way like he did want to speak to Gustav as an objective there. He also had a bottle, like a very small bottle of poison that he just hid behind his molars. That is really fucking impressive to hide that the whole last time. Like, I mean more so like specifically for the events that happened past this. That is really impressive. But anyways, he has that the whole time, just in case, right? As an easy out, if he has to, because he's abusing return by death all over here. And I saw people complaining about that on a whole bunch of things, like, oh, this doesn't really make sense, because, you know, the whole thing with, like, Arc 4 and all that shit and all this, it's like, the whole point was that he's not abusing the ability. Here's the thing, you make a great point. Counterpoint, he is a child. He does not remember these things. He is forgetting a lot. And also, it's this whole thing of, like, I don't know, I don't really feel like with this scenario, it's become, like, that much of a shocker to him or anything like that, that he may have to die a lot and everything, right? He already had to die a lot with the Sparka. So it's not really surprising that, oh wow, he has to die a lot more later, right? I don't know, that's just me. I think that, but also, more so the child thing, I mean, he is forgetting a lot. Look at Cecilus, he doesn't even remember he was in the 9 Divine Generals. There's a problem here, right? But, anyways, he's talking to Gustav, and after talking to him, we learn that the curse rule is kind of just a bunch of hot air. It's not. We'll get to that. But what it seems like overall is it's a bunch of hot air. It's not real. It's made up so that the gladiators can essentially be in such a control that it's not like they're shitting themselves in fear constantly 247, but it's not like they think, oh, well, this is easy, we can just, like, you know, relax, we can slack off all this shit, right? It's this sort of thing where it's like they can still properly be gladiators putting on a show. So, essentially that's what it is. It's not, once again, we'll get to that. But then Subaru goes back to the group, and because of Hien's friends, there's some rumors going around about Subaru. Because you might remember, once again, from the previous volume, some stuff involving Vincent. And that was the fact that he was trying to get the word out about his missing child, right? His missing son with black hair and black eyes. That got out to the point that it is now here in the island. That rumor is here. So now everybody there thinks, oh shit, that's Vincent's son. And, the way Subaru is describing his dad, his own dad, kind of correlates with that, right? It connects properly. So there's some suspicion there. But then after a bit, another carriage is coming into the island and all this, right? And now we get the problem of, this whole scenario. And that's, the people on this carriage are Arakia and Todd. And all of a sudden, while, they're trying to figure out what to do, people are dying. Subaru's, kind of okay. He's not in great shape, but he is still alive, which is interesting. But, everybody else is dying and all this shit. And he's still kind of alive, and then Todd shows up. He doesn't recognize him, but doesn't really matter. Either Subaru dies to the knife or he just poisons himself and all that. And he tries to poison himself. And unfortunately, it's not some sort of proper poison. It's not something that would be painless and kill him. In fact, it is very painful and it is a problem for him. But it does kill him, so there's that. But then we loop, and the problem really hasn't changed much, because instead, this time, he goes to speak to Cecilis about, certain things and all that. Just a whole bunch of shit. But then, Cecilis dies, because the same events are playing out. But it does show that, okay, he didn't avoid this or anything like that, right? There was nothing to that. It's he's still gonna die to this. And then, once again, Todd shows up. Subaru dies, but not before essentially realizing, oh, the curse rule is real. I said that out loud, and I'm now realizing I could make a very obvious edit here. Yeah, you know what? Put it on screen. The curse rule is real, but we don't know fully what it is. And as he realizes that, Todd just kills him, right? Because he realizes, oh shit, he figured it out. Die. But then we loop, and now with a better strategy in mind, Subaru has the idea, of course, to learn more. And via, him using Hie's, essentially camouflage, right, because he's a lizard, essentially using his camouflage, they're able to enter the room and perfectly, disguise themselves so that they can hear the conversation and understand what happened, right? As well as Wade's also kind of slowing down the carriage outside. But after that whole thing, right, he hears Todd and Arakia speaking to Gustav, and we learn that the Prime Minister would like to just get rid of everybody on the island, right? He'd just like to remove all of them, right? Kill them, right? Now, Gustav doesn't like that for a large variety of reasons. One of the biggest being, His Excellency made this rule, and he also specifically said, no matter what, don't disobey this rule. No matter what I say or what somebody else says, don't disobey this rule. So that becomes a problem for them. And then Arakia just kills him. So there he goes. And then they get the curse tool, right? Big ol' black orb and everything. And, it's essentially that can just kill everybody there. Luckily, by causing a big disturbance there and everything, Subaru and Hien are able to just grab the orb and run out, and now Todd and Arakia have to follow in all this shit. And Todd creates a commotion by essentially saying, hey, those two killed Gustav, there's a problem now, okay, that's all. And they're still killing the gladiators and shit there. I mean, the guards believe him and all that, right? And they're not going to kill the guards, but everybody else, the gladiators, they don't care. They're just going to kill them. And now, Subaru and Hien are in a situation. They eventually regroup with Tanza and Waits and Idra And I mean, the old man who made his poison is now dead because there's also like witch beasts on the loose and everything. And now they're getting like Subaru to confess about the whole, like, oh, you're Vincent's son, aren't you, and all this shit. And Subaru's confused as shit as to what's going on, all this. But eventually, you know, after figuring some things out, they find a plan that they can overall use to fuck with Todd, which is essentially saying, hey, he's Vincent's son, also we have the curse tool so we can fuck you over there, but also he's Vincent's son, yeah, we're leading this rebellion and all this shit, what are you gonna do? He doesn't really care about that. In fact, you know, whole ass fight begins and everything with a witch beast there and all that, and Todd fighting them. And now we get something very interesting that I was really hoping this series would kind of delve into at some point, which I guess we kind of had almost, not really, like, but we've kind of done something similar to this before in a way, a little bit. But it's the idea that the loops keep getting shorter and shorter with the amount of time passing. Like, it's essentially getting further in, to the point that stuff is becoming permanent. Or at least, you know, it feels like that. And just Todd is killing them each one by one and all this shit, you know. Waits gets hit real hard and then stuff collapses. He throws Tanza out the, like, collapsed wall. All this shit, like, Hien gets slashed. And also during all this, we get their, like, backstories, like the backstories of all the other gladiators and all that. I think Hien's is actually earlier, like when Subaru's helping him out with his friends and everything. But we get their backstories, and I do appreciate that, because I, of course, give us more on them, and I do really like that. But, you know, this is happening for a while, and it's not really going too well. It's going further in. Subaru doesn't know what to do. The situation is really fucking bad. And then we get to what is equivalent of chapters 74 and 75. And oh my lord. Same loop happens again. But essentially Idra is now, like, helping out and trying to give Subaru and Hien time to run. Hien's, like, been stabbed in the back so he can barely run and all this shit, and he's, like, falling over, right? Like, just collapsing dead. And all this shit. And then eventually Subaru encounters Cecilos, who is, like, half his body is just charred, right? Because he was fighting Arakia. And, you know, that's interesting, all this shit. And oh boy, 75. Here's what I want to say before I go into my thoughts about 75, right? I've seen a lot of opinions of this chapter fucking sucks and all this sort of shit online. I think this chapter is fantastic. I absolutely love this chapter. I'm going to go into all the details here because I really can't wait to speak about it. So, Subaru encounters Cecilos and they, you know, speak to each other a little bit here and there. Eventually, Subaru runs away while he fights Arakia, and we get this interaction between the two of them that, you know, still does show that Cecilos doesn't know who she is or who the other generals are, but Arakia, you know, fully recognizes him, knows who he is, all this shit, realizes that the stuff he's saying is incredibly similar to, you know, actual Cecilos, all this shit. She knows it's him, essentially. But then Subaru's running away, and oh my god, this moment. So, after running away for a bit, he encounters Tanza, who is in horrible shape right now. Incredibly wounded. I think she's missing an eye, if I remember correctly, or something like that. There's like blood over her eye, I think, or something like that, but like, I think she was missing an eye. One of her horns is broken. She's in real bad shape. Like, she should not be alive. It's to the point that, like, you know, Subaru feels bad about everything that's been done, because, you know, time keeps getting closer and closer to the point that shit might get, like, become permanent, right? And that's a problem for him, and he collapses, and he, like, feels guilty because he feels he's responsible for all this. And she starts running to him, and she is bleeding that whole time, like, you know, from her sides and everything, and it's like, fuck, I really do feel bad for her. It's like, oh my god. But then she speaks to him, and she gives him, like, a fantastic speech and everything. And it's just like, it's not, doesn't make her worthy of top 10 yet. Like, not even what's happened in this chapter makes her worthy of top 10 yet. But oh my god, I almost want to put her as an honorable mention, dude. Like, I've been very interested to see how, like, what she becomes as a character. And I had a feeling, right, for a while, honestly, since she got introduced, that, oh, she'll probably be part of this main group and everything. And here she is, part of the main group, and she's actually playing a bigger role. I love it. They're giving her some great stuff, and it's like, like I said, I don't know that she's top 10 material, but my god, she's good, right? Just this and everything, I'm really enjoying her. I also just really like her design. I just want to say that. I do really enjoy her design. But, yeah, now Tan shows up, and this is a problem, because, you know, Tenz is hurt, Subaru is hurt, all this. Tenza can still kind of fight, but, you know, Tan's kind of weary, and he's also not in a great mood right now. But then Subaru starts speaking to him, and, you know, he's asking him some shit and everything, and saying a whole bunch of stuff. And then he says something. I screamed when I fucking read this. I'm being real. I was so bewildered by this. Subaru outright says to him, I can return my death. He is not stopped. He says it. Todd hears it. Tenza hears it. It is heard. And I was fucking bewildered by this. Now, it made sense. The beasts from earlier weren't being attracted to him. So that actually, you know, added up. But it was just like, holy shit, he said it. He actually said it. They heard him. This wasn't some like, oh, he's in a different area, so technically speaking, he can say it. Which, even then, he couldn't because, you know, seeing as what happened directly after in Arc 4, yeah, it didn't really work out that way. But, like, he says it, and he could say it. And it's crazy to me, and all this shit. And then after having his own, like, inner monologue and everything, he eventually just says, like, come and find me, Satella. And immediately she, you know, finds him, gives him back everything, all that shit. And also his scent, which now all the, like, beasts are coming this way. And now Tom tries to fight them. Tenza crushes one of his arms with a rock that she throws. And Subaru fucking punches him and then flips him off. That moment was really great. And Todd just runs away. He realizes, fuck it, the beasts are coming here. They just did this shit to me, fuck that. And he just runs away. Because, you know, he has some fear there, right? Like, it's what he previously mentioned about, like, getting rid of something if, you know, there's some fear and all that, like, attached to it. But then Subaru gives the curse tool to Tenza and tells her to, like, make sure to protect it and all this shit and a whole bunch of stuff. And then, you know, passes on and all that. And then we get another thing I was very much hoping for this series to go into. And that was the idea that a reset point could be set backwards to an earlier reset point. This is something I've wanted for a while. And I'm gonna be real, I don't really see why people are complaining so much about this, because it wasn't ever said that, like, this couldn't happen. It totally could. They never outright said, no, that can't happen. No, it wasn't established or anything. So we could totally do that. No problem. And it happens. We go back to an earlier point. Todd and Arakia are going there. But now, Subaru has the entire group of him, the gladiators, all that, waiting at the bridge. Todd gets afraid and he just grabs the fucking horse and turns around. All that shit. They run away. Also, Gustav and the others now think, you know, Subaru's the son of Vincent. But he did actually go out of his way to tell Tenza that he isn't. Much like how earlier, before they knew about the curse tool, he told Tenza that the curse rule wasn't real, but, like, the others still believed it was and everything because he didn't tell them. Similar to that, he does that with the whole Vincent thing, which I like that he's, you know, telling her the truth and all that. And now he has a whole army to him that he is just, like, ready to use and all this shit. And also, Cecilis has joined the team. That is 2 now. We officially have 2 Divine Generals. We've made progress. He has an army. We have 2 Divine Generals, technically, because I guess Yorna's, you know, gonna associate with all of them. We did it. We made it progress with Arc 7. It is insane. But we actually did it. Holy shit. This chapter was fantastic. I love chapter 75. Holy shit, dude. So I'm gonna be real with all of you. This might be a wild opinion. I don't know. I don't know if it's some contrarian type of opinion. I don't know what the general opinion on this volume is. All over every single social media, website and app. But I'm gonna be real with you. This is my favorite volume so far of Arc 7. There was so much shit here that was just good, right? It's crazy to me because, like, previous volumes haven't been bad, right? I like them, but there were there was things there that kind of put them down for me a little bit, right? First 2 volumes were great, but a lot of it was just setup. It was just set up for, stuff that's gonna happen later and all this, or like just to give you a better understanding of stuff. I didn't really feel like there was anything too insane there, right? There was some neat stuff there, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it was just like, okay, right, like this is setting up for some stuff. We get the next volume after that, and that does have some big moments, as well as it sets up for some stuff. But I don't know, it doesn't have that proper feel to it, right? It doesn't have everything there that sometimes makes a fantastic ReZero volume, right? Then we have the volume after that, right? Volume 29, I believe? Yeah, 29. And that one's really good. That one's probably my second favorite out of Arc 7. And it's that one's great. My only problem with it is the stuff involving the people looking for Tanza and all that shit, right? Being affected by the whole Chaos Flame type of stuff, right? Yorna's ability. I feel like that part drags on a little bit. It only really got interesting when, we see Subaru and Louis and they start running around, right? Because after the whole reveal about Louis, it gets interesting there, but it's before that, it's neat to see the ability and how it works, but I think it drags on a bit too long, right? That's my real complaint with that one. The next volume, volume 30, I'm gonna be real. If it wasn't for the first, I'd probably say the first volume, just being generally decent, right? Nothing insane, still good, but nothing insane. This one would probably be the lowest, just because first half's okay, right? It's decent, but I don't think there's anything too big there for me personally, right? I think some bits of it actually also do kind of drag on. A lot of it is it's obvious on why, of course, but a lot of it is just we're dealing with the Great Calamity, and it's just wow, this is going on for how many chapters now, right? How many are we doing this for? So it's a little bit unfortunate to me that it ends up being like that, right? And then the second half, I think is great, but then there's also the whole thing I mentioned with the problem, which I know there's some stuff that isn't as bad because of side stories and all that, but I do think it is still a problem to introduce these not introduce, but reintroduce these characters and everything, and throw them back in the story this early. Like I said, we have not made that much progress. We've only now, I feel have made an insane amount of progress and everything. I don't know, it felt a little bit too early for me to be doing something like that. But maybe that just helps in a way, I guess. But I don't know. But then we get to this volume, and it's it has everything I could hope for, right? Has some neat fights in there and everything. It gives us some new characters and establishes them well. All this shit, right? Insane moments, really insane moments. All that good setting up for stuff and everything. If I had to give one complaint, I guess, there is one thing that I was hoping for. And at one point they mentioned the fact that, higher ups, right, people for example, the Prime Minister, could just show up here in the Gladiator Island and watch some of the shows going on. My thought process with this when I learned this info was, oh, what might happen is he shows up here and with all the other people that are in that mansion and all that shit, but then also so does Ren by proxy, right? She sees Subaru do something heroic and that snaps, right? It snaps within her, right? But we really don't get much on that because it's okay, past that, it is just, he has a whole army, he has Bacillus, they're gonna leave now, right? So it's okay, well, there goes that. It's neat to bring it up, of course, but it just kind of feels like, eh. But overall, that's fine and everything. But I do think, like, this volume is really great. I can see why some people would have some problems here and there with it, but overall, to me, I think it works out really well. It's a well-structured volume that I don't think has too many problems, really. But, you know, I could see how some people wouldn't possibly enjoy it here and there. And I will say, random thing I want to mention, but this is just more so about Arc 7. But I have noticed people saying this, or rather I saw like a specific tweet about it, and it really resonated with me a whole lot. And listen, I know I bring up a lot of One Piece examples, but please hear me out on this one, okay? Please. I'm not obsessed. Just hear me out on this one, okay? I saw a lot of people comparing the, I guess, what would have been current arc of One Piece. I mean, it's done now, but current arc of One Piece, which was Wano, more specifically the Onigashima stuff, to, you know, Arc 7 of ReZero, right? Now, like, hear me out on this whole thing, right? They were essentially mentioning the fact that, like, both arcs feel very similar, because they're introducing a whole bunch of characters, like, left and right, just out of nowhere, new characters, all this shit. It feels very bloated and all this. Some stuff, right, like some story-related things get brought up and don't really get used and all that. And while I don't think all of those points, I don't know, I personally agree with, like, I'm gonna be real, the story points being brought up and they're not really getting used. I don't know, man, I didn't really feel like, I didn't really feel like those actually were that bad. I mean, the obvious thing that people were bringing up with the whole, like, fake out deaths and everything, but, like, I don't know, thought that stuff was fine, personally. I'm weird, I know. I have bad taste. Remember, my favorite character is that one. So, you know, but overall, I felt like that part was fine, but I do have to agree on the idea that these arcs are kind of bloated, because, oh my god, we are, what, like, 7 volumes into Arc 7, something like that? Or I think we might be at 6 now. Are we at 6? I think we're at 6. Yeah, I think we're at 6. We'll be at 7 soon, and we'll probably be further than that soon, because I don't think we're ending it with the next volume. But, you know, actually, wait, I think we are at, are we at 7? I actually don't know, because I think I wrote down in my notes that I put 7. I did, didn't I? Oh my god, we're at 7, aren't we? Oh shit. Oh shit, wait, yeah, 26, 27, 28, 29. Oh my god, we are. Wait, no, that's 6, I'm stupid. I literally just showed my fingers and I just... Okay, well, next we'll be at 7. Why did I write down 7? You know what, who cares about that point? But, more so, let's focus on the fact that, yeah, we've been going on for a while now with Arc 7, and it's weird that we've made no progress. I will say, Teppei's been very condensed with the volumes, right? Starting volume was not nearly as long as other starting volumes. It was like, what, 12 chapters? Usual starting volumes are like 19, 20, something like that. That is 8 chapters less. That doesn't sound significant, but when you're reading the series, you realize, oh yeah, that's very significant. But, you know, it's definitely been shorter volume-wise. But it's like, man, we haven't really made much progress at all, or anything. I mean, now we finally are, and I'm happy for it. But it's just like, yeah, we've been just kind of going, and eventually we'll get to the end. But this is going to be a long arc. Like, oh my god. I'm going to, you know, I'm collecting all this shit, you know, in English, which unfortunately still going to be a while until Arc 7. I am excited, though, because Arc 5 shall be done, hopefully by November. Hopefully. And that'll be neat, because then I get to start Arc 6 collecting. But, yeah, collecting Arc 7 is going to be a bitch, because that's going to take me, like, I don't know, like, that might be like 3 or 4 years. That's it. That's scary. But it's like, fuck, I do wish, you know, we got to the proper point of everything, right? Like, we reached the conclusion a bit faster and all this, or at least just, you know, keep up the pace of going through the story. I like setup. I like stuff brought up and all this shit and new characters. But oh my god, please, just get like further into it. I mean, there are characters who we know are showing up in Arc 7, and they still haven't shown up. Like 6 volumes in. Like, what the fuck? I don't know, to me it's just wild, because it's like, damn, I was hoping by this point we'd have some good progress, but I mean, I guess now we do. We do now, but, you know, I do kind of wish we had that earlier. But yeah, overall this volume was pretty damn good, and it makes me very happy, and I'm excited to see what comes next. So, yeah, time for the next volume. Okay, so, I'm gonna be honest. I don't have a lot to recap with this volume, because really, a lot of this volume is just catching up on characters and learning about what's going on. You know, we learn about where like Rem's at, right, with Katya. I finally get to meet Katya. I'm you know, very happy about that. She's a character that, you know, I was decently interested in knowing about because, you know, related to Jamal, God's wife, all this, or fiance, whatever the correct term we want to use there is, right? And all this, and also, you know, wheelchair, that there is like some relation to Ren there and everything, and I was kind of more so curious of like, oh, was that something she, you know, was it like a problem she was born with, right, or whatever it may be, was it possibly something that happened during some incident, right, all that type of stuff. I was just a lot interested in her, but, you know, we get to see them speaking to each other, which is pretty damn nice. You know, now I get to finally see more about her. I'm not sure if there's any side stories or anything relating to her. I mean, I'll find out when I, you know, get to reading some more and everything. But, you know, first time meeting the character, it's pretty nice. But then we see, you know, what's going on with Amelia's group and everything, with, you know, Priscilla and Yorna there. Priscilla and Yorna having the big fucking reveal of them being related, you know, mother and daughter. That was pretty big. Until they reveal the whole thing of, from what I understand, feel free to correct me in the comments, Yorna is Priscilla's mother in the sense that there's the whole Iris and the, like, throne thing. I don't remember entirely the name of it properly, but it was essentially some sort of commandment made that she will always, like, essentially take over a body in a sense, or something like that, from what I understand, because she was like revived, but there was no vessel for it, so she takes over other vessels and stuff like that. That's the general understanding I have with it, and it's like, okay, that's where it comes from. So she's her mother without entirely being her mother, that type of thing. And it would also make sense of the whole ability that's there, right, the soul marriage. It would explain why Priscilla has soul marriage and all that. Then we see, you know, other groups such as, like, you know, the real Vincent and, what's his face? I don't remember. His name's really hard to remember, I'm not gonna lie, but the Prime Minister, right, as well as, Rubilk, right, they're all there speaking to each other about what's going on. You know, this war that's gonna be approaching them and everything, and how they're gonna deal with it in terms of defenses, all this. A lot of it is just, here's these characters talking for the chapters. I'm gonna be real, it isn't until the last, like, 5 or 6 chapters that we really see any actual, you know, action or anything happening there. A lot of it is just talking, which is fine for the most part. I'll get into that in like later, but then we get to those, like, you know, last few chapters and everything, and we see some shit going on of like, oh, Amelia versus Madeline again, right? We get to see them fight again. That's pretty cool. She calls down a fucking cloud dragon. That's weird, and I'm interested to learn more, right? I'm very interested. That's fucking cool. You know, it's weird, but it's cool. But there's that. There's Garfield versus Kappa. Once again, Garfield gets to have a fantastic fight. Always makes me happy that he gets a good one. But then he gets, you know, interrupted later, or well, not interrupted, because the fight ends, you know, he wins, but he gets Kathma out of there. He doesn't really want to kill him or anything like that, or have him die. But then Ulbert appears and starts fighting him, and he's getting his ass kicked thanks to him. Other sides, in terms of the other bastions, other people are fighting there. There's like Heinkel and the Shuderakians like at one side, as well as some others like Jamal and all that, and Zyker's there, which is pretty great. It's great that Beatrice kind of like knights him in a way and everything, and all this like stuff. All of them help him out to encourage him to fight and everything. I actually forgot to mention, and I apologize about this. Beatrice, we get a really great moment there earlier on during a lot of the talking and everything, that Beatrice and Otto, both of them, because essentially Vincent's group, the real Vincent. I might have said real Vincent earlier. If I did, I apologize. My brain got mixed up. But the real Vincent, Abel, all that, shows up there and everything with his group, and Louis just so happens to be there. And as a result, Beatrice and Otto see Louis and, start freaking out because they recognize her and everything, and they realize, wait, oh shit, shit that happened at Arc 6, right? Like, the person that they disappeared with, also at Arc 5, that person who, was, fighting them, right, who randomly transformed into a little girl, all this, that's her. So, that creates quite the tense scenario there. I won't lie, it took me a second to realize, because I was sitting there and I was like, why would Beatrice recognize her? And then I thought about it and I went, oh shit, right, she called to Otto first because they fought her. Oh, that explains a lot. But it took me a minute to realize, but yeah, then I figured it out. But anyways, back to the battles and everything. So, a lot of the bastions, they're trying to make their way through and everything, because it's generally people there in each one. The fucking big metal dude, Moguro, is at one of them, which, Heinkel and all of them are, advancing through, but, he appears there. He caused some problem for Heinkel, and Heinkel is just... I feel bad for him, man. I already did, but I feel really bad for him here. He just... Oh, he just, really gets the shit end of the stick here. Yorna and Priscilla are fighting Arakia, and, later on in the fight, or while all these fights are happening and all this, there's a big crystal cannon that's in the, crystal city, all this, right? And it just is ready to fire a beam that will just absolutely wipe people out. Luckily, Beatrice is there. Incredibly weak right now, physically, not, power-wise, but she's there. And she just removes any effect that shit could have had, which is real great. Only for her to start deteriorating, because she doesn't have much time left, because they have to get to Subaru quickly. She's in a very bad state right now. And, well, actually, before I get into the main thing, I almost also forgot to mention, Otto is currently helping out in terms of giving directions for what's going on and everything, thanks to his divine protection. Petra helps him out with her Yang magic. She has Yang magic, that's pretty fucking cool. I can't wait to see what future developments we get with that. And then Medium's also there, just helping out in a way, asking for what's next, asking for what to report to Abel. Until, out of nowhere, Todd shows up, and now they're going to have to deal with Todd. Now, back to what I was saying about Beatrice. Eventually, Louis just starts screaming and trying to find out, how she can fix Beatrice, until all of a sudden she looks in a direction, starts zooming, all the way over there, right? The whole leaping type of thing she can do, and eventually makes it to Subaru, where Beatrice and Subaru get a really heartfelt reunion. I like it a lot. Now, I did a very small recap of these events and everything, and to be honest, it's mostly because not a whole lot really happens in this volume. There's a lot of talking, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of, hey, here's the people fighting and all this, right? Here's the war happening. Not a whole lot happens other than that. And if I'm gonna be honest, the pacing actually goes by pretty fucking quickly. A lot of events just go, and it's okay, well, here we are at this next point. Now, you might ask, is it bad? No. But I'm gonna be honest. This does show a problem I'm starting to have with Arc 7, and there's something additional to it as well. This is just going by these events. It almost feels like these events don't matter. They do, right? Like there's an obvious thing that matters there with them. But with the pace they're going at, it feels a little too quick. It feels like these are just small events. The biggest one I can point out is the Beatrice thing at the end. I love it, right? I love them having a proper reunion, but that shit goes by so quick. She stops that cannon, and immediately we are leaving, and then we get to him. And it's just like weird to me, because it's like, oh, okay, I thought there would be a little bit more build up here, but no, that's it. And it kind of sucks for that. And about that additional problem that I have, it's a problem that I had with, I think, the 5th volume of Arc 7, but it became very clear here. Shit just kind of happens sometimes in this arc. And more so what I mean with that is one of the biggest examples I can think of, specifically with this volume, is the Divine Generals, right? When we were first properly introduced to the whole deal with them, the general thing was, hey, if we have more, we win, right? That was the whole like spiel with it. So it made sense, like, because it was like, okay, so it's a race to see who can get more, and they were both decently even, right? Because we had Yorda, we had Cecilis, right? But like by this point in the story, Gauze, if he's still alive, he probably is, but if he's still alive, very easily would join, Abel's side. Ulbert, there was a deal going on there, right? He was listening to what was being presented to him. So there was that too, right? It was essentially a race for a 5th, because also the fake Vincent side, there was like a decent bit supporting him there. So it was like, a back and forth generally, and it could be like a proper race to the 5th. It would be interesting, right? Here's the thing. This war that is happening, listen, it's cool. I wouldn't have even minded it if we did get to that 5th, but there was still a war, right? Some shit like that. I wouldn't have totally minded it. There is a problem though. This war happening and everything, and just the general, oh, we're just gonna break into the city and take it over. This feels like we took out that point, right? That plot point. It is gone. It no longer exists. What Divine General race shit? No, this was just gonna be a war. It's weird to me, and I'm not gonna lie, it kind of ruins it, because it was really interesting from that angle. I was like, I may have mentioned the fact in the past that this was taking a while to get to this proper point where we're both decently even with Divine Generals, but we made pretty damn good progress at this point. So I was like, oh shit, what are we gonna do from here? Having a war, I get in a sense why it happens. It's just like, man, what was the point of that stuff, It's like, I don't know, I did kind of want to see more about that than just having like all these battles take place and everything. And it's become the problem that I've realized with this arc of, I know this arc isn't planned and everything. And it sucks to say this, because I'm, the person who said like, oh, I'd love to have Gusteko as an arc, and everything like that. That said, I also did say an EX novel would be fine, but still. But part of it is just the general thing of pushing an arc in there without proper planning and everything could easily fuck it up. And I mean, this technically would still support the Gusteko thing, right? If planned out, it could work, right? I'm not saying it has to happen, of course, right? Like I said, EX novel, very possible. Generally, that's just what I would like. But focusing on Arc 7, pushing an arc in there because you made a lot of cool characters and everything isn't really going to work super well, right? Overall, it could, right? Some proper, planning and all this shit. In fact, I think the first 4 volumes and the 6th volume, right, volume right before this, shit was fantastic, right? Maybe not the first 2. The first 2 were pretty good. They weren't insane, but I think the 3rd, 4th, number 6, all that, fantastic. But 5 and this one are just evident to me of like, yeah, not all of this is great, and I hate to say it in a way. I mean, I'm not trying to say this as a bad thing towards Arc 4. Once again, I really like Arc 4. I think some people may have seen where I put it on the list or some shit, or may have heard me say it's in my opinion, the lowest of the big arcs, and just assumed I hated Arc 4 or I disliked it. I don't. I really do love Arc 4. I just think it's the lowest for me. That said, with the way Arc 7 is headed, it could end up the lowest for me. I'm going to be honest, if Arc 7 does not finish within the next volume and doesn't, wrap up a whole bunch of plot holes and everything that are there, or maybe not plot holes, but just plot lines that are there that could end up becoming plot holes if they're not wrapped up, right? That type of thing. We could have some problems here. We could have some real problems. And I mean, we could get 2 more volumes and I could be fine with it. But all I'm saying is, if we get the next volume, and it wraps up some things nicely, right? It does things well. I like that, right? And I'll still put it above, but it's a bad sign for, things to come. And there's a chance that it could end up lower because of that, because we couldn't, wrap it up within, some sort of set period of time with having a proper, general plot there, when compared to the whole get the Divine Generals. If it's just like the war and all this shit, and it takes this long, damn, at that point it would be, 9 volumes? It's kind of sad to think about that we might reach that point. I still think Arc 7's pretty fucking good, right? I still like it a lot. I know some people don't really like it, especially, with the point we're at now. But I still think it's pretty damn good. I just feel that we could be better here. We could be way better. But, yeah, that's the volume. And here we are, peeps, the final volume of Arc 7. It's been a decently long ride to get here when we really think about it, because shit, Arc 7 has lasted since 2020, I believe, from the general dates I saw, and that's a lot longer than other arcs, because a lot of other arcs, from what I can tell, ended roughly a year after. This one's been here for a while, right? A few years, but hey, here we are, the end of Arc 7. So, let's get into it, shall we? We've got a lot of juicy details to get into here, which, honestly, it's kind of short for a volume, but overall, there's still a lot that's really nice here. So let's just get into it, shall we? So, finally, Subaru and Serena's forces are here. Along with Subaru is Cecilis, who is just running around and kicking some ass. We also get a cute little interaction here between Tenza and Beatrice, and this also leads into Beatrice pointing something out that's really interesting about Subaru, and how he has too much built-up mana, or the general implication of that. That's a little scary, right? Because the whole thing before she showed up was that, oh, well, we kind of gotta get Beatrice so that this isn't a problem for him anymore, right? She can take it all in, all this, we don't have to worry then. But now we have a problem, because she's looking at it like, oh, this is bad. This is a bad amount. This is, ooh, and that has me worried for what might happen from here. Like, shit, right? It's some info I'm definitely really curious on. And then Subaru is using Corleones to essentially boost the morale of his, team and help them out and all this, which in turn also Beatrice is helping out and, kind of reducing the enemy forces and such, right? So it's this perfect balance of Subaru's forces getting stronger and the enemies getting weaker, this general type of thing. Something interesting to note, though, about the whole Corleones thing that I didn't even think about before is Corleones, right? Takes on the burdens of others, all sorts of stuff, helps with the general fighting experience that everybody else has other than Subaru. Something I didn't note about that before though, until now, I just didn't realize it until I read this chapter, was this technique is incredibly similar to the soul contract technique that Yorna and Priscilla have, right? With them, it's different, because with them, everybody else is protected, and also so are they. It's kind of this mutual agreement type of thing, whereas with Subaru, they're protected and have a general boost of morale, and I mean, he's, helping out with that, definitely, but it should be noted that he does take on much more of a burden than something like the soul contract technique. And speaking of Coriolis, Subaru. Natsuki fucking Subaru. The man himself has surpassed a witch. Not in terms of combat or knowledge or something like that. It's not something absolutely absurd. But the fact that he activated this type of technique or method that somebody like Echidna, who did a fuck ton of testing, all sorts of shit ton of research, and she decided, yeah, this is impossible, this can't be done. The fact that she decided that, and now he is using that technique that she decided, yeah, no, that can't work. The fact that he's doing that is absurd. That gets me hyped. This is exactly what was missing from the previous volume, right? The previous volume felt very, here's just dialogue, right? It didn't feel very, hype in terms of the stuff that happened. It doesn't always have to be like that, but it should be noted, something that makes ReZero interesting a lot of the time is interesting details that are in there. Whether it's this mysterious thing that we have to learn about later, or something like this, right? That is what the previous volume felt like it was missing. It was missing that core integral part that makes ReZero interesting. There are many reasons, but that is definitely one of them. So, this happening now perfectly shows you what that volume was missing. This is it. This is what I was just hoping for that whole last time with the previous volume, and now I'm getting here. And the crazy part is, the chapter I'm speaking about at this current moment, talking about this technique, all this is the third chapter. This volume isn't long, don't get me wrong, it's pretty short, but this is the third chapter. We are barely into talking about this, and already something cool as hell has happened. So Abel's realized that Subaru is the Rebel Force leader, so there's that, now he knows. And Serena, shockingly, has not realized that Abel is Vincent. I know, because he has a mask, it's going to be harder to tell, but it's definitely an interesting detail that, she still hasn't realized yet, hasn't been told by him, or anything like that. I guess because certain things could definitely be weird in this situation if he did, but, there's that. And also, Amelia and Madeline's fight is continuing, but something interesting here. So she's fighting the sky dragon that's up in the air, running around, all that. And the interesting thing to note is that this dragon is senile, just like Volcanica, which is really funny that Amelia has now fought 2 dragons, and both of them have been senile. She could have added a third dragon to that list if she wasn't captured in Arc 5. It also should be noted I'm not calling Cappy senile, I'm just saying that more so on the dragon side of things for Amelia fighting, so yeah. So then we learn that Madeline is able to pretty much completely control Mizoria, the dragon that's in the sky, and then that's a pretty decent problem because now, there's no reasoning with this thing or trying to find a way to speak to it like Volcanica. This is just her now. So that's a problem for Amelia. Then we have Ram joining in with Mizelda, Torita, all them, which is pretty damn nice. And we get Roswell joining in with Garth's fight against Olbert. And this I really like. I really like this a lot. Because there's a few things I knew going into Arc 7. From a not even spoiler perspective, I guess it's kind of a spoiler perspective, but the general thing was, I remember seeing some messages or something like that regarding Tepe saying that, I'm going to be putting, Garfield and Roswell in Arc 7, and Garfield will get a decent boost in terms of his fighting ability, and Roswell, perhaps you'll see some martial arts type of stuff with him, right? So that was really interesting to see. I was very excited to see what would happen with that. And when Garfield is fighting Olbert with the, like, you know, previous volume and everything, my immediate thought from that point was, oh shit, does this mean that, like, because he's getting his ass kicked, does this mean that Roswell's gonna jump in here? And this is when we see that. And yeah, here he is. He's jumping into the fight. It's 2-on-1 now, and this is real damn interesting. And then with Amelia's fight, right? Amelia versus Madeline, and now Mizoria, right? This is kind of a problem, albeit Madeline's just conked out. But, you know, overall she's fighting a Sky Dragon. Is a little hard. It's a very big one, very powerful one. Except Cecilia shows up, and now it's Amelia and him versus the dragon. So we're back to the Yorna and Priscilla fight here against Archaea, and we learn some interesting details, such as spirit eaters, how they work, right? Consuming spirits and all that. And it's actually very interesting to learn, because we find out that there's a lot of cons here. There is a lot of cons to eating spirits. It's similar to the insect tribe people, right? Like Kathma and all that, right? Similar to them, where it's like, oh, taking in these insects kinda has a risk the more and more you do it, right? It's similar with spirit eaters, where, yeah, taking these in have a risk for both you and the spirit. Like, there's a risk here. There has to be some sort of, like, mutual bond in a way, right? There's proper conditions to fill with that, which makes, you know, Archaea's existence insane with what she's capable of. But also here we get Yorna and Priscilla's soul marriage activating with each other, right? They finally fully accept each other as, you know, mother and daughter, all this, and it activates. Now they both have it, and we get to see where this goes from here. Except we don't. Because I'm going to be honest, we don't cut back to this fight after this point in the volume. And this is the end of the arc. So, that's actually all the info we have on that, which is fine. I will get to that on why it's fine way later, but that's it. That's all we get from them for now. So, it's unfortunate, but yeah. Now we go back to where, you know, Todd is against Otto, Petra, and Medium, right? And this is a fight that's very interesting because it's a more strategy-focused fight, and I like that way more than I like power scaling fights, right? Sometimes a power scaling fight can be kind of cool, right? Depending on how you do it. But a strategy fight is something that involves a lot more, you know, brain power, all this, thinking, planning, all that type of shit. I like that a lot. So, we get this fight because, really, this is a strategy fight because Otto, Petra, and Medium aren't in the best situation right now. Otto and Petra are okay, fight-wise. Maybe not even okay. Petra, less than okay. Otto, okay. But we also have Medium, who is a kid. She's strong, but she's a kid, so she's definitely weaker than before. They are fighting Todd, who is somebody who is strong. So, they have to think around to get him to fuck off, right? And the perfect way to think around this is the spirits that are around the area. And they manage to essentially use a combination of, you know, their own capabilities plus those spirits to try and get him to fuck off. For a while, it starts working. But then, because of Todd's essentially authority, not authority in the sense that, you know, like the general powers of this series, right, like the archbishops have. Not that sense, I mean the literal sense of it. His authority with, you know, Archaea and all that, right? It's thanks to that essentially telling these spirits that, like, hey, you're dead, I'll have her eat you if you even try and do this shit again. And essentially tell him where all the bombs are in the area, right? This general plan that they had, essentially fucking with it. Yeah, that plan gets very easily fucked over. But before anything bad can even happen, Big Man Al shows up. We finally get Al here. He's now gonna fight as well against Todd, and this is gonna be real great. Because, oh shit, Al, you're really high up there for me. And just seeing this was real damn great. So then we go back to Abel and Serena, where Ubilk is talking about the great disaster. I'm gonna be honest, I forgot about this shit. Part of that, in a way, is because of what happened with Subaru shortly after Olbert tried to change him back into, like, an adult, right? when that happened, that kind of threw me off because I almost assumed that that was it, even though they gave the general implication that that was not it. So it was a little bit odd to me. But hey, the Great Disaster is still around, and honestly, the fact that that shit happened is good because that threw me off. And then hearing this was like, oh, that's still happening. Oh, okay. Ooh, this is gonna be tough then. But yeah, we get that and everything. But who cares about that? Because Rem gets to go to a certain other place in the castle and finds Gauze. And you know, I don't necessarily have some sort of huge opinion of Gauze or anything. I haven't seen enough of him to gain one. But I will say, just design-wise and the general way he acts in like EX5, I think he was even there for a little bit with EX4, I believe he was. He's great. I like him. And if we get more out of him, I feel like he'll be even better. And I mean, shit, we get, you know, some interactions with him in this volume. He's great. I like him. I think he's a pretty damn good character, and I'm excited to see what more Teppei does with him. And then we get the best chapter of the volume. So, just to start this off, very quickly, is Ubilk talking to Abel, all this about, oh yeah, you have a role to play, blah 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 blah, stuff like that, right? That's interesting. It's something like, oh, well, Abel's going to be doing something else here that's going to be really big. And I mean, we learn what that is shortly, but overall that's just an interesting thing to learn about at that time. But the main thing here I want to talk about is Amelia's fight against Madeline. First of all, this fight, right, there's been interesting fights before in the series. This arc has had some great fights, right? Garfield versus Kathma was definitely a big, great point with the previous volume. As much as I found the previous volume to be the lowest of Arc 7, it was a really great fight, right? I enjoyed that one very much. And, you know, Yorna versus Olbert, that fight was fantastic. That one was very entertaining. But this fight right here is insanely entertaining. I had a blast reading it, right? I enjoy these fights all around in the series, right? I love them all. But there's varying degrees in terms of reading them, of how much I enjoy them. There's the general very bottom, that was good, right? That was good to read, right? That's the bottom. This one is pretty damn high up. I don't know if I would put it the absolute highest. That's something I'd have to think on more. But this one's high. This one's really high. It's insanely good. But then we get the extra part of it. The parallels to Arc 5. We have two different parallels here, right? First of all, this is another big fight for Amelia, and this is like one of the biggest ones she's gone since Arc 5, right? Yeah, she had the fight against Volcanica in Arc 6, but that was almost more so a like trial-focused thing than it was a fight, right? So that one we're going to exclude a little bit here, just solely off that, right? Proper fight-wise, the last big one she got was Arc 5. With Arc 5, we got Reinhardt, right? We had Reinhardt there and Amelia fighting against Regulus, as well as Subaru, but, you know. So, we had Reinhardt there. This time, we have Cecilis here. The literal opposite to Reinhardt, right? The two strongest swordsmen out there, with the exception of that crazed prince that we have no idea on. Teppei, please. But anyways, the point I want to focus on here is just that parallel there, right? Cecilis and Reinhardt. That's already great. But then we get the line from Amelia, and oh my god, this line is so damn good to hear and just read and all that shit. So, Arc 5, we got the line from her that she, you know, had the general feeling of like who she's gonna wait for to fall in love with, or like rather the idea of that and everything, right? General idea, right? That whole thing. Oh, that's nice. That's a good line. I like that, right? Because it gives you the idea of, oh, we're getting there. She's taking the steps to make it there. And now we're here at 7, and she outright says, fucking word for word, maybe there's a few words I'm excluding here, but this is overall it. This is really overall it. I already know who I'm going to fall in love with. That fucking line. Oh, like, listen, we already knew this was gonna happen at some point, right? This is the whole point of, like, this build-up with this type of shit, right? This romance here, right? The whole point of it. But at the same time, it is very great to see it being built. And seeing this is so damn good. This is like, here's the thing, right? I'm going to be honest here. There's times where I will go on Twitter and I will post about the chapters. If I do that, that is usually more so me being very excited for them, right? Me posting my notes, that's usual. If I outright post a line or some shit from a chapter, that is me freaking the fuck out because I'm enjoying it a lot. For example, 2 volumes ago, we had that final chapter. That one was insanely good, right? So I posted about it. This one I posted about because holy shit, this is good. It's just like, it's a singular line of dialogue, but oh man, it's fucking great to see. I love it. I love that a lot. So, yeah, she says that, and then the fight continues and all that, and it's cool as fuck, but oh my god, the fact that we make parallels to Arc 5 here and everything, I'm just excited to see where we go from here, right? Especially because we're at Arc 7 and she said this. We're at Arc 7 and she said this. And it's like, what the fuck? Holy shit. Alright. Honestly, come to think of it, she doesn't even fully know that Subaru's on the battlefield yet, right? Because she talks about Casillas, or talks to him rather, and speaks about Subaru, right? And she speaks about the fact that, like, oh yeah, do you know him by any chance or anything? And Casillas has no fucking clue about, like, that name or anything, so he just goes, oh no, I just know the boss, that's it. She's like, oh, that's unfortunate. But, like, with the way things are being described, she almost thinks it's him, right? And it's interesting. They haven't even actually reunited yet. They won't even reunite by the end of this. Somebody else will reunite with Subaru, but, like, not her, right? So it's very interesting for where we might go from here in terms of Arc A. Then we go back to Garfield and Roswell's fight against Obert. And the interesting thing to note here is it actually makes sense on why Roswell's using martial arts. Because if he uses magic, he's basically revealing who he is. That is a really good detail, so I like that that's why we have a different fighting style for him. And hey, this is the second fight he's ever really gotten. This is the second fight that he could possibly win. The first fight, he lost. I know you could say, well no, he actually won that fight because he blew a fire blast at Ram. No, he lost. He lost that fucking book. He lost that fight morally. That's a loss. Ram won. But anyways, so this is interesting because, hey, he could actually win this fight. This is the second one we get to see from him. But also, now we get the martial arts style to it, so that's a lot more interesting. We also see, because we cut back to Subaru's group, we see them going by, like, with their carriage and everything. And Louis is able to actually use the flash step stuff. And haha, yeah, I know, I said flash step, yeah, I know. Anyways, the more important thing, I hope I didn't destroy my poster there. The more important thing is that Louis can use the flash step on objects and stuff like that, which is really interesting. At first, I thought it was just people, you know, people connecting to her, whatever it may be. But no, it's also objects and everything like that, which is really damn cool to think about. And then, by the end of this, Abel and Vincent, who's actually just Chiza, are now in the same room, and this is where things get real tense. So all of a sudden, a lot of these first-class generals are just retreating out of nowhere. And then we cut back to Vincent and Abel. Vincent, of course, being Chiza once again. It's a little confusing to use these names, because Abel is Vincent, and Vincent is Chiza. Very confusing to think about in a way. But anyways, they're interacting, speaking to each other, all this. And then Chiza kind of stabs him a little bit with the fan he has. That injury is less important than the injury that follows this of a giant white light fucking piercing the back of Chiza and going all the way through. Chiza's dead. That's the end of my statement there. Chiza's dead. That's it. We also, at one point, see Ram, because during their fight before Moguro essentially retreats, we see Rem using her magic a whole lot, and that got me thinking. If she uses her magic a bunch, then by that process, clairvoyance should activate, because she'll receive harm since she has a certain limit to what she can use, and everybody else who can actually help her out with that whole magic type of thing is somewhere else on the battlefield. So there's a chance that she might use too much, and then boom, gets hurt. By that process, clairvoyance might activate. Something interesting that I thought about here though, was with that, because clairvoyance might activate, that might affect Rem. Rem feels that, boom, something inside of her like kind of snaps. Not fully, right? Not everything coming like flooding back. Just more so what's been happening essentially, right? Where she's had bits and pieces where things are starting to come back slowly, very slowly, right? Something like that, where she feels it and all of a sudden that feeling gives a sense of like something that's happened previously to her that she doesn't remember, but it's there, right? That's just something interesting to note that I thought of. That we learn a lot more about Shiza, and essentially what we see from here is how nothing he did essentially throughout the events of Arc 7 and all this shit, right, all this planning was with malicious intent. Because Vincent was going to die, right? That was the big clear thing, is Vincent will be killed. But the thing with that is, Shiza didn't necessarily, want that to occur in a way, but at the same time, it was a matter of how do you get around that? This Stargazer person is literally telling you this is going to happen. So how do you get around that? You become Vincent. You work your way through all this shit so that this can happen. And, hey, Vincent technically died. Shiza died while being Vincent. He did it. Also, should be interesting to note, but Ubilk mentions the fact that there are 4 great calamities that are going to happen around the world and everything. So, that's really interesting, and we'll talk more about that later, especially one of them. So now Vincent is with Moguro here, and I'm just gonna say Vincent. It's way fucking easier. Shiza's dead. Shiza's dead. Why? Like, I'm not gonna call him Abel. We're gonna call him Vincent now. So Vincent is now with Moguro, and they are currently fighting Balroy. He's alive, out of nowhere. His eyes are weird. He's got crackly little skin. He's undead essentially, but there's something to it. And they're fighting him along with Madeline. Because of course Madeline's going to support Balroy. So now they're dealing with this whole problem that's there. Also, somebody else is back from the dead. I wish I didn't get spoiled about this. I didn't know about Balroy, so Balroy was a big shocker to me. I was like, oh shit. But this next one, I did know about, which is really unfortunate, because not long before this, I had finished EX5. And then I saw a spoiler for this, and went, oh, okay, she's back. So anyways, Lamia is also back. She has the same stuff going on, cracked skin, all this undead business. But yeah, unfortunate I knew about that ahead of time. Kind of wish I didn't. But she's here now. That's scary. Especially the fact that she still has the sword. That's scary. So we get to see more of Garfield and Roswell's fight here just a little bit, which is really nice. I do like that Garfield gets more and more to like grow in terms of these fights every time they happen. So do always love these, and he gets to grow more here. I like that. And also we get Vincent essentially fully taking over all the first class generals. I mean, it makes sense, he's Vincent. Very easy. And Gauze is here. We get to see more of him. I like that a whole lot. But the big thing here, though, is that we learn more about the 4 great disasters that are to come. So the first one that we learn about is the great disaster that is currently happening. So there's that. We also learn about one with a witch, which, I feel like is kind of obvious on where we're going to go with that, but still interesting nonetheless. But then we hear about 2 others that are very interesting. One of them being the reaping of the city-states. I'm curious as to what that means. And the other being the collapse of the Holy Kingdom, which, if you don't know, refers to Guseko. Which, by the way, this leads me to my next point. Tapei, please, 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 please.
Very curious to see what the weeping of the city-states means. If it's related to some locations we don't even fully know yet, right? Like, maybe it is actually related to a location we know, but it's something within that, right? Like, as it implies, city-states, there could be something more to that, right? There's also the chance that it could be related to Pristella, right? Which would be interesting. I mean, weeping of the city-states, that's kind of similar to the whole fact that that entire area is, you know, essentially floating on water. So, could be related to that. Certainly really interesting, and I'm very curious to see what this, as well as all the other disasters, are really going to lead to. And then our final chapter, we get Al and his group getting Todd to finally fuck off. He runs away. That's it. They did it. And then we also see Serena and her group kind of just preparing for the worst, because at this current moment, things are going to head downhill, especially with what Garfield had told Frederica and everything. So that's kind of interesting to see where we might go from here. But then finally we cut to Rem, who is now helping out Katya and Flop. And Flop, interestingly enough, has a message for Vincent, which I'm very curious on what that is and everything. But we get more out of Rem. We see another moment where the back of her head is kind of connecting the dots of the past, right? Once again, slowly but surely. But I like it. It's good. And as we go further into the scene, right, we eventually get Subaru reuniting with Rem, along with Beatrice, of course. And we have the funny little moment of her being like, "Who are you?" Right? Which is weird, because, listen, I get that she was there during the whole cross-dressing stuff, right? So it makes sense, of course, that she knows who he was during that. But the fact that she sees Kid Subaru, and the immediate thought is, "Who are you?" Even though he looks pretty much identical, right? I guess his clothes are like slightly different, right? The shirt is slightly different than the previous one, because before it was like kind of an overcoat type of thing, and then there was the shirt, but now it's just the shirt, right? I guess that's the real difference there, but overall, he's the same, so I don't know what to tell you, but it's just a little funny, but also a little odd. But then we also get Katya reuniting with Todd, and this is very interesting. It's similar to the previous volume where we had a parallel between Rem and Katya, because they were talking and the way that they spoke about certain people, right, and having them be worried for them or worried for them, all sorts of shit like that, right? It's similar to now where they're both, you know, reuniting with those people and everything, right? I like that. I like the parallel there. It's good. But with this chapter, we finally get to the end, and we see the big reveal I wasn't really ready for, but I was spoiled on. I saw the volume cover, and the whole reason that this is a full video, in terms of where this review is coming from, yeah, it's because of the volume cover. It's because we see Sphinx. She's alive and well. She's here. That's how we end it, is Sphinx. And that's very interesting, because oh shit, I was wondering when we were going to get something with Sphinx, and here it is. And that's it. That is Arc 7. That's how it ends. I'm being genuinely honest with all of you, in case you didn't know. That's how this whole thing ends. So, what did I think of the arc? Because I'm sure that's a big question on a lot of people's minds. And let me just say this, right? I don't mind how this ended. This was actually kind of smart on Taipei. Here's the thing. Arc 7 could have been absurdly long, right? If we also shoved the action in there for what's to come, this would have been an absurdly long arc. It already is, in terms of how long it was taking. It's not the longest chapter-wise, albeit I don't know about, you know, text length. It could be the longest there, but overall, it is generally the longest arc in terms of how long it was taking, volumes, all that. It would be longer if we also had the action from the Great Disaster in there and everything. So, I do think it's smart to take Arc 7 and have it be the building point for characters, plot points, all this sort of shit, right? The building point till we get to the Great Disaster. I think that's incredibly smart, because then you can go from there, and here's Arc 8, and Arc 8 can be the Great Disaster, all these fights, all that type of shit, right? The resolution for our characters, both in Vollachian and the ones from Lagunica. We get a good resolution there.
That's what I like. I like that it's handled as such. Now, time for my actual thoughts on the arc. So Arc 7's weird, which should be known. This is an arc that, to my understanding, wasn't fully planned. This just kind of happened because Teppei made a lot of characters with EX4, and he liked a lot of those characters, and as such, we got this as an arc. So, what will I say about it? It's weird because Arc 7 has some weird points to it. It has a lot of good highs, but some bad lows, right? The good highs it has are insane. The volume from a while ago, the one on the Gladiator Island, that one was fantastic. It had a lot of really good moments. The final chapter in that volume was fantastic. Additionally, the fourth volume in this arc was fantastic as well. I really fucking loved that volume. That was very interesting. 1, 2, 3, they were good. They were good. Listen, they were slower, but they were good and they helped establish a lot of things. They may not have had an insane amount of like crazy stuff happening as compared to the previous ones that I mentioned, but they were good. But then we have the volumes shortly after that, or not even long from now, of the previous volume and the fifth volume, I believe, where the fifth volume kind of felt slow, and slow in a bad way. It was a lot of just general, how do we handle this shit happening with Subaru, and it was just a lot of talking until it actually happened. And then we got into the B plot, which I know there's side story stuff, and I definitely have to get to it, but listen, it is not a smart idea to put side story stuff on the side and then be like, yeah, so anyways, these characters are here now. That's bad. Don't do that, because that is not a smart idea. Not everybody's going to read that side story. There's going to be a lot less people reading that side story than the main thing. So, not doing that is advised. So, immediately there's that as a problem, but there's also just other problems I had with the general B plot. There was stuff sometimes that I just did not like. There was some cool stuff, don't get me wrong. And Rem had some really great moments there in the last chapter. I loved her moments in that last chapter. But overall, kind of just okay. And then we got the previous volume, which was the lowest for me, because a lot of it, like I mentioned with the previous review, was just, it was talking. It was talking, it was finding out where characters were, all that type of shit. It was essentially getting us caught up with just every single chapter. And I wasn't really huge on that. It definitely could have been better. So now we get to this point, right, where I think this volume is fantastic, but it's really short. And now we have the point where I have to essentially talk about Arc 7 and where I'd put it, and all this sort of shit, right? And that's the thing. I don't think Arc 7 is as bad as I was going to say it could get with the previous volume review, right? I mentioned that it could hit a pretty bad low, right? It could be lower than Arc 4 for me. Not to say that that's necessarily bad, right? Like, Arc 4 is still a very good arc, should always be noted, but this is something that is getting to the point that it might be lower than that, right? It might just be a good arc. But reading this volume made me realize, no, it had some lows, but it had a lot of good highs, and all this sort of shit, and ranking it is a bit difficult now, because of just how it's structured. So I had to think about it. And then I realized a general answer I want to give, and this is a weird answer. Arc 7 is at the same point as 4 for me. Not higher, not lower, same point. They are on the same spot on a tier list. At the end of the day, if I were to actually put it on a chart, one would have to be above the other in terms of formatting, but in my general ranking, there would not be a difference. Because, listen, Arc 4 is really damn great, and it has some beautiful moments in there. But so does this arc. The only reason this arc is as low as it is because it has some volumes, 2 of them, that are either okay, or this could definitely be better, right? Had it not had those volumes, or rather had those volumes been better in terms of how they conveyed plot and everything, right? Plot points, all that sort of shit. The previous one just being better all around. I feel like Arc 7 could be higher than Arc 3, right? Like I previously ranked. I feel like it could be there. But the problem is, it's not. Because of those problems I mentioned, of 2 volumes and everything, and all that. So, as such, I think right next to, like, 4. Regardless of where you position these or anything, just the same spot, there it is. That is where I'd put Arc 7. It was a great arc, it was a fun time. It's interesting to see this arc come to an end. It's my first time watching an arc come to an end, and Arc 8 will be my first time watching an arc start, so that'll be fun. But yeah, I think Arc 7 was a good time. I can definitely see why some people don't like it, 100%. But for me personally, I still enjoyed it. I had problems, but I still enjoyed it. And yeah, that's it. That's our review. It didn't take very long to reach this point. I mean, shit, when you really think about it, the Arc 7 first half review came out in like what? I think like June of last year, something like that. It's almost been a full year since then, and we're at the second half. I honestly didn't think we would be at it by this point, right? I thought it would be another year till we get to the second half full video, but no, we're here. This is it. So that's interesting. Of course, we'll have more reviews to come, but obviously, you know, we're going to do those volume by volume. If there's a spoiler, we'll do it the same way as before, or now rather, right? Full video. You can just watch it that way. It's a lot easier. People don't get spoiled. It's nice. It's safe for everybody and nice for everybody. But yeah, I guess that's Arc 7 for now. So thank you all for watching. If you haven't already, right? And obviously I'm not going to force it or anything, right? Entirely up to you. But if you haven't checked it out and you would be interested in checking it out, there's a video on the channel, Dynamic Music and Video Games. It is easily the most fun I've had making a video. Like, I'm genuinely being honest with that. I had so much fucking fun with making this video. I also had a headache from how much I had to edit. But I was still really enjoying it while having a headache. And I think that's fair to say that that was pretty damn good, right? Because I was able to enjoy it even through pain. Might not be healthy. That's okay. But if that interests you, right, topic-wise and everything, I highly recommend you check it out. It's definitely how I want to handle a lot of big videos now. Some of these, for example, you might have seen it in this video, I'll use some more editing and green screen type of stuff a lot more, right, in there, or just like fun type of things we can do throughout it, right? I'm definitely going to do that more. But I will say, for a lot of the bigger projects that require scripts and everything, like that video and the get-intos and such, I definitely want to handle a lot of like editing like that and a lot of just script writing the way I did and everything. I'm going to have fun with it, essentially. I want to have a lot more fun. I've had fun with these videos in the past, but I want to have a lot more fun with those script-heavy videos. So, yeah, if dynamic music in video games interests you, I highly recommend you check that out. It's a good video, at least from my personal opinion, and I usually don't like my videos, so I think that's also fair to say. But, yeah, with that said, thank you all for watching, have a great night, and we'll see you with Arc 8!